Everyone knows someone like this. They're online. They scroll. They see everything. But they never post. No photos. No updates. No opinions floating into the feed. And people notice. They get labeled quickly. Private. Shy. Disconnected. Or worse, hiding. Because we live in a world where visibility is mistaken for honesty. Where sharing is seen as openness. And silence is often misunderstood as absence. The unspoken rule now is simple. If you're happy, you post. If something matters, you share it. If you exist, you document it. So when someone doesn't, it feels suspicious. What are they afraid of? What are they hiding? Why are they so quiet? But that question misses something important. Some people are quiet online not because they have nothing to say, but because they've learned something about being seen. They learned it slowly, through small moments, through watching how quickly meaning gets flattened into images, how nuance dissolves into captions, how vulnerability becomes content. They noticed how stories lose their weight once they're scrolled past, how pain becomes engagement, how joy becomes comparison. And somewhere along the way, a quiet decision forms. Not everything needs an audience. This isn't rebellion. It's not rejection of technology. It's not fear of judgment in the way people assume. It's discernment. People who don't post often understand something early. That attention changes things. That being watched, even gently, alters how you feel inside your own life. They've felt that subtle tightening. That shift where an experience stops being lived and starts being framed, where the moment becomes a future post, where the joy waits for validation, where the sadness wonders how it will look, and they step back, not loudly, not dramatically, quietly, because some people don't want to perform their inner world. They want to inhabit it. This isn't distance. It's intimacy with themselves. And the truth is, many of the people who don't post are deeply reflective. They feel things fully. They just don't feel the need to translate everything into proof. Silence, for them, isn't emptiness. It's space. If you sit with them long enough, you'll notice something. They're not absent. They're attentive. They know what's happening. Who's engaged? Who's drifting? Who's struggling? They see the birthdays. The announcements. The arguments disguised as opinions. They just don't step into the stream. Because for some people, being visible feels like standing under a spotlight they never asked for. Even when the light is soft. Even when it's friendly. There's a bodily feeling that comes with posting. A slight exposure. A release of control. Once it's out there, it doesn't belong to you anymore. It belongs to interpretation. To screenshots, to silence, to reactions that arrive, or don't. And for people who are deeply inward, that loss feels heavy. Not because they're fragile, but because they're careful. They've learned how easily meaning can be misunderstood, how quickly intention gets reshaped, how a sentence can live longer than the feeling that created it. So instead of sharing, they hold. They talk in private spaces. They choose one person over many. They send messages that don't need likes to exist. Their relationships are often quieter, but denser. They don't narrate their growth. They embody it. And when something painful happens, they don't announce it. They disappear for a while. They process. They let the emotion move through their body before giving it language. Because for them, expression is sacred, not casual. Posting feels like flattening something alive. Like pressing a flower into a book and calling it the same thing. So they watch. They notice how others seem to need the feedback loop. How confidence rises and falls with numbers. How identity becomes negotiable. And they think, I don't want my sense of self to live out there. This isn't superiority. It's self-protection. Some people learned early that once you're seen, you can't always take yourself back. That being known too quickly can feel invasive. So they choose slowness. They let people earn access. And while the world assumes silence means disengagement, the truth is often the opposite. They are engaged. Just not performative. Present. But unbroadcasted. Here's the part we rarely say out loud. Not posting is often not about fear. It's about boundaries. People who don't post usually know where they end and others begin. They don't confuse attention with connection. They don't confuse visibility with worth. Their sense of self is not built in public. And that makes them harder to read. Harder to categorize. Harder to summarize. Which makes others uneasy. Because we're used to access. We're used to updates. We're used to knowing. But some people are not meant to be consumed in pieces. They are meant to be encountered slowly. In conversations. In shared silence. In moments that don't leave a record. For them, life is not a narrative arc to be followed. It's an experience to be felt. And they've learned something important. That once you start posting, you can start managing yourself. Editing yourself. Anticipating reactions before you even feel the emotion fully. So they opt out. Not completely. Not angrily. Intentionally. This isn't disconnection. It's presence redirected inward. Not secrecy. Selectivity. Not loneliness. Sufficiency. Some of the most emotionally grounded people you know don't post at all. Because their nervous system doesn't need constant mirrors. Because their joy doesn't need witnesses to feel real. They don't disappear when things get good. They go deeper. And when they care about you, you'll know. Not because they tagged you. But because they showed up. In ways that can't be scrolled past. Silence makes people uncomfortable. Not because it's empty. But because it leaves space for interpretation. When someone doesn't post, others begin to fill in the blanks. They assume distance, arrogance, disinterest. Sometimes they assume sadness. Sometimes secrecy. Sometimes judgment. Because in a culture built on sharing, choosing not to share feels like a quiet refusal. And refusal is often mistaken for rejection. But this silence isn't aimed outward. It's inward-facing. Still, people project. They wonder why they weren't included. Why they weren't acknowledged. Why their moment wasn't mirrored back. And the person who doesn't post often feels this tension. They sense the expectations. The subtle social pressure to explain themselves. Why don't you ever post? Are you okay? You should share more. Each question carries a message. Visibility equals health. Silence equals absence. But the truth is more nuanced. Some people express care privately. They remember details. They check in quietly. They show up without announcing it. Their loyalty doesn't live on a timeline. It lives in consistency. And yet, because it's unseen, it's often overlooked. This creates a strange loneliness. Not from lack of connection, but from being misunderstood. They can feel unseen even while being whole. Because the world keeps asking them to prove their presence. But presence isn't always loud. And connection isn't always public. The quiet ones learn early that being misunderstood is the price of not performing. That if you don't narrate your life, others will invent a story for you. And instead of correcting it every time, they let it pass. Not because it doesn't hurt, but because explaining yourself constantly is its own kind of exhaustion. So they accept the misread. They choose peace over clarification, depth over display. Not because they don't care, but because they care enough to stay true to how they move through the world. Silence, in this way, becomes a filter. It reveals who needs proof, and who understands presence without it. There is another layer here. One that's rarely talked about. For many people who don't post, silence is a way of staying intact. When you share publicly, parts of you scatter. They live in other people's reactions. In interpretations you can't control. In moments that outlast the feeling that created them. And some people are deeply sensitive to that fragmentation. They want their identity to feel cohesive, rooted. owned. So they keep their inner life close. Not hidden. Contained. They don't need their past to resurface unexpectedly. They don't want old versions of themselves preserved without context. They understand that growth is non-linear. That becoming happens quietly. And the internet is not always kind to change. So they protect their evolution. They let themselves change without announcing it. Heal without documenting it. Outgrow things without explaining why. This gives them a strong inner anchor. Their sense of self comes from alignment, not feedback. From how they feel at the end of the day, not how they were received. They don't outsource meaning. And this doesn't make them better than others. It makes them different. They value autonomy over affirmation. Integrity over immediacy. They trust that the people who matter will know them without updates. And often, they're right. Because when you sit with them, really sit with them, you feel it. The steadiness. The presence. The absence of performance. They're not building a brand. They're building a life. And that choice, quiet as it is, takes strength. Not loud strength. Internal strength. The kind that doesn't ask to be seen. There is a story people tell about those who don't post. That they must be lonely. That if someone isn't sharing their life, they must not have one. That silence means isolation. That quiet equals lack. It's an easy assumption to make. In a world where connection is measured in responses, anyone without visible echoes is assumed to be alone. But loneliness is not the same as invisibility. And solitude is not the same as abandonment. People who don't post often know this distinction intimately. Because they've felt both. They know what loneliness actually feels like. It isn't the absence of people. It's the absence of being met. You can post every day and still feel profoundly alone. You can be surrounded by reactions and still feel unseen. You can be constantly acknowledged and still feel emotionally unreachable. They've watched this happen. They've seen people overshare and still ache. They've seen joy performed while grief sits untouched beneath it. They've seen how noise can mask disconnection rather than heal it. And slowly, quietly, they learn something important. That visibility does not cure loneliness. Sometimes it deepens it. Because when you share something real and it passes too quickly, when vulnerability gets reduced to a tap, when your inner world becomes content for someone else's momentary attention, it can feel more isolating than silence ever did. So they choose a different path. They invest in fewer connections, but deeper ones. They don't reach for everyone. They reach for the right ones. Their social world is often small, but emotionally dense. Conversations last longer. Pauses are allowed. Silence is not threatening. They don't feel the need to be constantly perceived to feel real. Their sense of existence is not dependent on reflection. And this is where the myth breaks apart. Because loneliness isn't about how many people know what you're doing. It's about how many people can sit with who you are. People who don't post often crave resonance, not recognition. They don't want to be seen broadly. They want to be understood precisely. So they wait. They wait for moments that can hold weight. They wait for spaces where they don't have to translate themselves. They wait for people who can stay present without needing constant stimulation. And while the world rushes to fill silence, they listen. They listen to their own inner rhythm. They notice when connection feels nourishing versus draining. They learn the difference between being alone and being depleted. This gives them a quiet confidence. They don't panic when there's nothing to post. They don't feel behind when life looks ordinary. They don't mistake calm for emptiness. They know that some seasons are meant to be lived, not displayed. And yes, there are moments of loneliness. Real ones. Moments when they wonder if being quieter means being forgotten. Moments when they question whether depth is worth the cost of being misunderstood. Moments when they feel out of step with a world that moves loudly. But they sit with those moments instead of escaping them. They let loneliness teach rather than terrify. They ask better questions. Do I want attention? Or do I want connection? Do I want to be seen? Or do I want to be safe being real? Do I want to be included everywhere? Or do I want to belong somewhere? These questions don't have easy answers, but they lead inward. And inward is where these people live. Not cut off. Not withdrawn. Rooted. They build lives that don't require constant proof. They find joy that doesn't dissolve without witnesses. They experience meaning that isn't dependent on being mirrored. When something good happens, they don't rush to share it. They feel it first. They let it settle in their body. They allow it to be theirs before it belongs to anyone else. And when something painful happens, they don't explain it publicly. They protect it. They tend to it privately. They give it time before giving it words. This doesn't make them emotionally closed. It makes them emotionally intentional. They understand that not every feeling needs a stage. That not every chapter needs an audience. That some parts of life grow best in the dark. And the irony is this. Many people who don't post are deeply connected. Not to the crowd, but to themselves. Their inner world is inhabited, not avoided. Their silence is not hollow. It's full. Full of reflection. Full of meaning. Full of presence. They don't disappear when they're alone. They arrive. And in a culture that equates noise with life, that kind of solitude looks like absence. But it isn't. It's relationship, turned inward. It's connection, without spectacle. It's belonging, without performance. Loneliness is not their defining trait. Discernment is. And that distinction changes everything. There comes a point where the question changes. It's no longer, why don't I post? It becomes, do I need to? And for many people, the answer arrives not as a decision, but as a settling. A deep exhale. Because they realize something important. They are not broken for wanting less visibility. They are not behind for moving quietly. They are not incomplete for choosing privacy. They are simply oriented differently. In a world that rewards broadcasting, choosing to remain unseen feels like defiance. But for these people, it isn't rebellion. It's alignment. They've noticed how much energy it takes to stay visible. How much self-monitoring is required. How easy it is to start living for response rather than resonance. They've felt that subtle shift. When a moment stops belonging to them. When they begin to experience life with an audience in mind. And they step back. Not because they are afraid, but because they want their life to feel like theirs. This is not about control in a rigid sense. It's about coherence. They want their inner world and outer world to match. They don't want to split themselves into a public self and a private self that never quite align. So they choose wholeness over reach. They let their experiences remain uncompressed. They allow moments to be complicated without explanation. They let joy be quiet. They let pain be private. This doesn't mean they never share. It means they share with intention. They tell their stories in rooms that can hold them. They offer their truth to people who listen with their bodies, not their thumbs. They choose presence over permanence. And slowly, something shifts. They stop measuring their lives. They stop wondering how things look from the outside. They stop translating their inner world into something palatable. They begin to trust their own experience as enough. This is where peace enters. Not loud peace. Not performative peace. A grounded one. The kind that doesn't need affirmation to stay intact. They understand that not everyone needs access to them. That being known by many is not the same as being known deeply. That intimacy grows in protected spaces. So they build those spaces. They cultivate friendships that don't require updates. They form bonds that survive silence. They show up in ways that don't announce themselves. Their lives may not look impressive online, but they feel steady from the inside. And when they are misunderstood, when others assume distance or detachment, they no longer rush to correct it. Because they've learned that self-explanation can become self-erasure. They allow themselves to be misread. They accept that not everyone will understand their way of being. This isn't indifference. It's self-trust. They trust that the right people will feel them without proof. That those who require constant visibility were never meant to know them deeply. And here is the quiet truth at the center of it all. Some people are not meant to be consumed in fragments. They are not meant to be scrolled past. They are not meant to be summarized. They are meant to be encountered. Slowly. Fully. In real time. Their presence reveals itself in subtler ways. In listening. In consistency. In depth that doesn't fade when the moment ends. They don't disappear by staying quiet. They remain. And perhaps the most important permission they give themselves is this. They allow their lives to be unobserved. They allow growth without documentation. Healing without witnesses. Becoming without announcement. They let chapters close without posts. They let new ones begin without explanation. They understand that meaning doesn't need an archive. And in choosing this, they reclaim something rare. A life that feels lived, not displayed. A self that feels whole, not divided. A presence that doesn't flicker when attention moves elsewhere. So if you are someone who doesn't post, who watches more than shares, who feels deeply but quietly, there is nothing wrong with you. You are not late. You are not hiding. You are not missing out. You are simply choosing to exist without constant reflection. And that choice, in a world that demands visibility, is not small. It is a form of integrity, a way of saying, my life belongs to me. And that is enough.